One more. One more, guys. Okay.
We should have that up
Okay.
soon.
Is that the screen?
Yeah.
How
yeah.
big is it? Enough to
Roughly,
see?
yeah, a
Yeah.
TV like
Oh, okay.
45 inch.
Okay,
I
right.
don't know.
That'll help. Yeah. Okay, thanks.
No, it's one of those things. What is that? Stop. Hey, we should put it back on there. You're the only one told.
All right, which one did you break? I'll fix it. Oh, the one
Behind that
out.
one.
Oh, I can see it.
Is that chicken? Get this, like. There we go. That isn't even.
See that? Orsi was carrying that chicken one. I was like, hey, take care of that.
Where's your chief?
Newfoundland?
He was in Vancouver last week. I saw him.
Was he?
Yeah.
He doesn't even send proxies. Jeez, it's now a little bit. Sorry, I can't say anything. I'm not supposed to get this. Oh, you probably haven't heard, but so just saying that of our distribution came in.
Oh, you guys did two?
Yeah, it did. But the first one went out good, so
So we'd like to begin this afternoon session. Sammy Gwetch to the drum for calling us back in. I understand I need 28 chiefs while we're waiting for that. So we can begin with our Health Equity Fund decision. It's going to include a resolution, so I'm going to ask Toby Mitchell. She's coming online. Toby Mitchell online, if you can enter and begin your presentation. We just wanted to as well know that this cloth has been hanging here on the front. It needs an owner.
She's not even. Oh, she's in now.
So Toby Mitchell, via the Zoom.
Hello.
Toby,
Yeah.
go ahead
Good
with your.
afternoon. Apologies for not being there in person. I did get hit with some vertigo this past weekend and am unable to travel. I do have unstable internet messages coming up, so I am keeping my video off in hopes of maintaining my bandwidth. Is the presentation ready up on the screen?
So the presentation on Indigenous health equity, we need it up on the screen there. It's not up there yet, Toby.
Okay, perfect. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cecilia Mitchell. I'm the Director of Health, and I'll be speaking to this resolution and decision. I apologize for the double echo I see that is going on. I'll try to go a little bit slower while AV kind of tackles that. So back in June, we did have this discussion at the ACA, the All Chiefs Assembly, where you voted to distribute the 2024-2025 Indigenous Health Equity Fund using the OFNLP funding formula. The decision was to go for the one fiscal year, and we are coming back for a decision for the upcoming fiscal year and a recommendation from our health coordination unit for the decision to be made for 4 fiscal years, to get us to halfway through the health equity fund. So can I go to the next slide, please? Hello? Okay, thank you. I see it at background. I hope you all can hear me. I did see a little bit of audio on the screen. So I'll just quickly go into the Indigenous Health Equity Fund. It was announced back in February 2023 to increase health equity or health funding to the provinces and territories for 10 years. Through this fund, the government is investing $2 billion over 10 years to address the challenges that Indigenous people face when it comes to accessing healthcare. The funding will provide $200 million annually in support of the distinctions-based Indigenous-led approaches. So the regional allocations were derived from the per capita basis from the on-reserve and Crown land populations, utilizing the 2021 IRS system. The Ontario First Nation share of this funding is $27,695,199 for 10 years, and we have already gone through 1 year of the 10-year funding cycle. So there are 9 more years left for this. And that is what we are looking to have a decision for 4 years out of this for today's resolution. I go to the next slide, please. So, yep, the current status is we are looking for a discussion and decision on the funding allocation for the next 4 years. ISC has sent out emails and letters to chiefs with your allocation options that are the same from last year. We recognize that there is a lot of work to be done on the options, and that the modified Berger and the funding formulas unilaterally set out by ISC are not favorable for a lot of communities. So we have been undertaking work to secure additional funds to be able to do some of that work on funding formula specifically. I have been in discussions with ISC securing additional funds for a future assembly, for leadership to meet and have a dedicated discussion on funding formulas, as opposed to it kind of being piecemeal throughout the various sectors as ISC starts coming to us for more and more funding decisions to be made. So recognizing, that there is a lot of work to be done on the funding formula area, and that there is still a need for this funding to get out to communities to start, working to try and serve some of the priorities that are set out by yourselves for your communities. So once this was announced last winter, we did go through a series of dialogue sessions with leadership and technicians, putting forward a variety of options. The overwhelming response from communities and leadership was that the funding be direct to communities through the contribution agreements, allowing communities to utilize the resources as they see best. So can I go to the next slide, please? So after last year's discussions and the decision made last year to utilize the OFNLP funding formula for this current fiscal that we're in, we had a discussion with the Health Coordination Unit to look at options kind of moving forward, and their recommendation was that instead of coming back to this discussion every fiscal year, that we go for 4 fiscal years on this one, which would take us to halfway through that 10-year funding, allowing communities to plan and count on that funding and it being set for 4 years, instead of continuing the government kind of cycle of wondering every year how much they are going to get and not being able to really plan. So we are meeting again to discuss the funding allocation for the health equity, and what we, based on the discussion with the Health Coordination Unit and the recommendation from that, we did draft a resolution outlining that we will come back to assess the funding in fall 2028. Should there be additional funds identified sooner, or there is a funding formula that is decided on by chiefs, then we will come back after that and rediscuss and reassess what to do with these funds. Can I go to the next slide, please? So here are the recommendations. We are still continuing the push to get some solid answers on the Métis Nation of Ontario situation. We did send a letter out to ISC and received a letter back just yesterday outlining a response which basically was not a response, in my opinion. I know it would not be satisfactory to the chief, so we are going to continue to push and advocate for this issue and utilize all avenues at our I guess, disposal or at our use to really try and push that issue of identity with the Métis Nation and the funding. And, you know, if this is really looking at health equity, you know, we know that there are a lot of issues with this that were identified by leadership and technicians last winter, and we continue to push and advocate for change, and also continue to push for additional funding to be added for the increase in population and the growth and everything that was identified in our dialogue sessions and at the last assembly when we had this discussion. So here on the screen, we do have the 5 options that were put forward last time and that we are putting forward again for this decision. The modified Berger, which is based on total population. The second option is the OFNLP fund, which is based on reserve and crown land population. Option 3 is modified Berger, also on reserve and crown land population. Option 4 is modified Berger plus a $25,000 base on reserve, based on reserve and crown land population. And then option 5 was a modified Berger plus $50,000 base for on reserve and crown land population. Just wanting to kind of recap last assembly's decision. We did go through an analysis process with this, and the numbers did show that with the OFNLP funding, it did give most communities the most amount of funding. I know that sounds a bit convoluted, I guess, but when we looked at the other options and looked at you know, how many communities would get the highest amount possible, I believe OFNLP came back with 66 communities that would get the most funding, and then the rest were kind of at 30 and a little bit lower. So that was just a quick analysis that we did share at the assembly last back in June as well. So I believe that is the last slide of the presentation, and kind of wrapping it up for my presentation. I did want to kind of scale it down just because I recognize that a lot of you have sat through this in June, and a number of you did participate in the dialogue sessions that were held back in December and February, and at the wellness conference back in March. Thank you. Vera, we can't hear you online.
Okay, sorry.
Perfect, thank you.
All right. Any comments or questions on the presentation? So that brings us to the resolution, Resolution 2429A, Indigenous Health Equity Fund Allocation 2025-2029. It's moved by Chief Adam Paywitz from Shawanaga First Nation. It's being seconded by proxy Jody Noah, Delaware Nation. Whereas is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Therefore, be it resolved on the second page that we, the Chiefs in Assembly, call for the Chiefs in Assembly to decide an allocation of the Indigenous Health Equity Fund for a period of 4 fiscal years beginning in 2025-2026 through fiscal year 2028-2029, based off the following options. So we're asking you direct community allocation. Option 1 is the merger or the modified Berger total population. Option 2, Ontario First Nations limited partnership funding formula on reserve and crown land population. Option 3, modified Berger on reserve and crown land population. Option 4, modified Berger plus $25,000 base on reserve and crown land population. Option 5, modified Berger plus $50,000 base on reserve and crown land population. The option receiving the most votes will determine the allocation methodology beginning in fiscal year 2025, 2026, and will be revisited by the Chiefs and Assembly again in the fall of 2028. In the event that additional funding or a new funding formula is identified, the Chiefs will assess community allocations under the IHEF sooner. 3, the results of the vote will be appended to this resolution, confirming that the option chosen represents agreement on the First Nations allocation under the IHEF. 5, call on the Indigenous Services Canada and Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs Canada to cease and desist distributing IHEF allocations to the Métis Nation of Ontario until Canada verifies and validates the Métis Nation of Ontario claims of Indigenous identity. So that is the resolution. So we need to vote on each one of the resolutions.
No, so. The resolution, basically,
So how-
validates a vote, right? And so we'll go through each of the options, people will raise their lanyards and we'll count.
Okay, so we're going to do the resolution first and then come back and do the vote?
Yes, the resolution like validates the vote.
All right. So that is the resolution. It's been moved and seconded. It's been moved and seconded. It's been moved and seconded. Questions called. All of those in favor of the resolution. We're just talking to the resolution. All those in favor of the resolution? Put your hand way up like this. If you're in favor of the resolution. People online, they're voting. Okay, thank you. Those people against the resolution, raise your hand. Vote now if you're against the resolution. Those abstaining from the resolution, raise your hand. You're abstaining from the resolution, raise your hand. Miigwech. The resolution is carried. Thank you. Now, I need you to help me. And Chris is going to come and help me. So if you're in favor of option 1, that's the modified Berger total population, you vote now. We're going to do it one at a time all the way as it's outlined there. If you're in favor of option 1,
Raise their hands online.
raise your hand and raise your hand online. If you want option 1. Anybody in favor of option 1?
Person, the online?
Okay, 1. All right. Option 2 is Ontario First Nations Limited Partnership Funding Formula on Reserve and Crown Land Population. Option 2. If you're in favor of option 2, put your hand up. Vote for option 2. Put your hand up.
We're online. Six so far. 7.
Okay. If you're in favor for option 3, that's a modified Berger on reserve and Crown land population, vote now. If you're in favor of option 3, Raise your hand. Option 4 is a modified Berger plus $25,000 base on reserve and Crown land population. If you're in favor of option 4, raise your hand. Miigwech. If you're in favor of option 5 is your choice of modified Berger plus $50,000 base on reserve and Crown land population. Raise your hand. Option 5. Option 6. Grand Chief, I was doing a good job here. So I thought. After all of that, Chris, what do you have?
Got 1 for option 1, 30 for option 2.
Read it here.
All right. So here are the results. For option 1, we've got 1 vote. Option 2, 30 votes. Option 3, none. Option 4, none. Option 5, 5. So it's option 2 that wins out.
So option 5 is the Ontario First Nations Limited Partnership Funding Formula on reserve and Crown land population will be. Oh, sorry. Thanks, Chief. I should wear your glasses. Option 2. Option 2 is what you have selected will be the Indigenous Health Equity Fund allocation 2025-2029. Miigwech, I believe Pierre Dubosky has the next agenda.
All right. So I have the awesome privilege of introducing our next agenda topic, and it's the Greenhouse Gas Pollution Pricing Act compensation. And there is also a resolution included. I just want to, again, firstly, welcome everybody back from lunch to the assembly. I'd also like to invite the wonderful Kathleen Padulo, Director of Environment, to the mic stand.
Okay. Oh, right on time. Okay, Sagoli, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to call Kate Kempton up to give a presentation and an update on the Greenhouse Gas Pollution Pricing Act. We do have a resolution on the carbon tax piece of the GGPPA, and Kate will bring us all up to speed on this afternoon. Thank you. Kate.
Bonjour, Tansy. Good to see everybody. You're going to be sick of me, for those of you who already aren't, by 4 o'clock this afternoon, because I've got 3 of these sessions. So this one is the Greenhouse Gas Pollution Pricing Act, and just a bit of a background. So Canada, in its infinite wisdom, and this part I'm not being cynical on, decided that the Western societies needed to do, which is true, a lot more to address the impacts of climate change. that Western societies and others are causing. We're not doing collectively as a human species nearly enough. We're literally, as we speak, on the road to extinction of the human species if we don't radically change. But what needs to change is mostly things that the industrialized world is doing under their paradigm of taking too much from the earth and not doing so sustainably in ways that have led to the situation we're in, where biodiversity loss, climate change, loss of water, and pollution levels are at a path where we're literally at an extinction level crisis. And so Canada wisely, far too little and far too late, said we need to do a lot more about it and passed this statute, I think in 2018, that is one, it's not the mechanism, but it's one mechanism, and it was to incentivize Canadians to turn away from fossil fuels, those fuels that add to climate change. They emit greenhouse gases, mostly carbon or methane, and to turn more to alternatives, electricity fueled by hydro, which is controversial in its own right, solar and wind, which doesn't emit greenhouse gases. And to do that, they added a charge. Some call it a tax, but a charge on the cost of fossil fuels. And that charge is payable by the producers of those fuels, the oil companies, the natural gas companies, and whatnot. It's payable by the distributors of those fuels, those who Enbridge, TransCanada, that transport and distribute those fuels. And ultimately, it's payable at the end of the day by individuals who are the end consumers. And so this was all when we get this sticker shock at the gas pumps or on home heating bills if we're heating our houses through those fuels. And that sticker shock of saying, oh my God, that's a lot of extra money when these charges are added in, is supposed to, have people choose to do other things, like put heat pumps, electric heat pumps in our houses rather than fuel the houses by oil, buy electric vehicles rather than gas-powered vehicles, things like that. And to some extent, it's worked. But then a little bit weirdly, this same statute says that everybody gets a rebate for the charge that we're paying. It's an estimate. It's not like there's a giant computer somewhere tracking what each individual is paying. That actually isn't possible because it would have to track each purchase at gas pumps, including by cash. And so these are estimates based on average household incomes, et cetera, et cetera. But the act is structured so that each household can apply by going online and going to your Canada Revenue Agency income tax online account and plugging in some information in a form, and then you get a rebate as a household. So that's the individual rebate. In addition to that, Canada had set aside money for special rebates. Those go to small and medium-sized businesses in Canada, certain of them, certain commercial fishermen, commercial farmers, and, quote, Indigenous communities. And Canada kind of guessed at what those appropriate rebates should be. But starting in 2020, without any consultation or communication that I'm aware of, if there was any, it was with some chief that doesn't seem to exist because nobody knows who they are. Is Canada set the rebate for Indigenous peoples at 1%. So in the province of Ontario, of all the total amount of carbon charge that is collected in, not by the province, but in all the payments made that where there's a carbon charge attached to it in a province, 1% of that would be allocated for First Nations and Métis. Those are the Indigenous communities that Canada was referring to. And then Canada arbitrarily said that 3/10 of that 1% would go to the Métis because their numbers are so high, and 7/10 would go to First Nations. The problem with that, and Kathleen Padulo and other, Lillian Trapper, myself and others, the ORC at various times have been involved, and many of you have over the last several years, telling Canada that that's wholly inadequate. Paying the individual household rebate through the income tax regime, where many First Nations don't believe in it, shouldn't have to believe in it, shouldn't have to access it. Their members don't pay income tax in some cases, and so they don't go there anyway. You need to find a different way for those individual First Nation households to get that rebate. And in terms of the rebate to Indigenous peoples as a whole, why are you giving 3/10 of that to the Métis? And where did you come up with 7/10 of 1%? Where'd the 1% come from anyway? That's not nearly enough to offset the costs that First Nations pay for climate change that we didn't cause. The problem with this whole regime is it failed to consider that First Nations are already hugely impacted by climate change more than anyone else because of your attachments to the land that you didn't cause. And that you're, in many cases, not able to make the choices to switch to other fuels, non-greenhouse gas causing fuels, because for those First Nations in the north, there aren't charging stations for electric vehicles, and heat pumps don't work in the extreme cold. And so, you don't have choices. This incentivization program doesn't work if you don't have any viable fuel to turn to other than greenhouse gas causing fuels. And so this was just hurting you, and that Canada needed to exempt you from having to pay the fuel charge at all. Or if they continued to refuse to do that, they needed to up the rebate a lot. And so that's sort of the background of the regime. The carbon charge as a percentage of the carbon being produced or distributed started at $15 a ton and is currently at 80 and will end up at 130. So it's significant charge on some people's bills. And so we brought a legal case a year ago in court. Chiefs of Ontario did on behalf of the nations in Ontario, saying what I just said, that this is an unjust regime. Canada failed in its duty to act honorably to First Nations in not only passing this regime that doesn't nearly provide access to rebates as all other people in Canada, and doesn't provide you enough because of the level of impact on you, and its refusal to change it based on what we were saying. And so that legal case did have it was a judicial review, a JR, that has had a pretty significant impact. It isn't perfect, and it isn't as yet necessarily good enough, but it was a very powerful statement, and it went all over the media. It attracted a lot of attention, and it is absolutely correct. And so we've got some significant changes made as a result. And where there's $300 million right now to be returned or rebated to First Nations, $296 million. $300 million is to go to you. That is not including the individual household rebates, but just the group special rebate to First Nations. Beyond that amount, Canada committed that from 2024 onward, it will double that special rebate from 1% to 2%. That commitment was actually made in April this year. But we said to them, yeah, our court case said all of the 2%, not a portion of it, with another portion going to the Métis, but all of it needs to go to First Nations. Canada has not committed to that, but it has increased the portion. So you're not just doubling, you were getting 0.7% before. Now you will get about 0.9%. And so you are significantly getting an increase from 2024 on of the carbon charge. So that is good. It's not perfect in that not all of it is going to, but the vast majority will, because Canada heard us. And so that's significant. The Minister of the Environment, Steven Guilbeault, and listen, Mr. Guilbeault, if you're listening right now, you need to smarten up. He was invited by the ORC to come to this meeting and meet with the chiefs and explain to the chiefs directly why Canada has failed to do certain things all along, why it took them 5 years to agree to the 2%, why they're still not agreeing that all of that 2% goes to First Nations, and they can do something separate for the Métis, but that Métis can't keep taking out of First Nations pool of whatever's allocated to First Nations, because that's Canada's fault. And that's the problem with the Crown's policies. It's not so much that there are Métis, but that Canada dilutes whatever you have by acknowledging and recognizing Métis and saying, yeah, you're there. Now you take out of the First Nations portion. And we've told them no way here. They need to answer for the fact they're still taking something out for them. And the Minister Guilbeault failed to show up yet again. He's hiding behind his desk chair. And he needs to stop doing that. The other problem I'm here to tell you about today, which I just found out yesterday, is Canada has a major decision left to make under the statute that we've provoked because of the legal case, which is they have to determine the formula by which this $300 million will be allocated amongst the First Nations. So there's exactly what percent is going to First Nations and what percent to Métis. We know it will be small to the Métis, but we don't know exactly how much. And what formula is going between the First Nations yourselves in Ontario. You know, they did consult about that by sending these giantly complicated and complex algorithms and charts saying this is how they've calculated different percentages. And you had to be, you know, Albert Einstein's niece to figure it out, but that was the way they consulted. But they did engage supposedly First Nations around that, and the minister is now making the decision. We were told it would be made in November, and now I was told yesterday not until hopefully, not even a commitment, by the end of January. So you can't get this money until the minister decides how it's going to be distributed amongst you. The issue with that, which we have identified to Canada for the last several months, is that a federal election could throw this whole thing into chaos, right? Until those monies that the federal government, this $300 million, is set aside effectively in trust for you, it is possible that if a different federal government is elected, like let's say Poilievre and his Conservatives, that they could toss this whole thing out. Now, I will say that it's highly unlikely. I do think it would be political suicide for any government to come in and renege on something that had been owing for the last 4 or 5 years. So I don't think in any event that will happen. But it's also your money that was set aside under statute that they're earning interest on that isn't in your bank accounts yet. And that's not right. And they just keep futzing around with bureaucratic red tape and I don't know what in Ottawa. And so I've been sending them not very pleasant emails telling them to make a decision. It's not fair to put you through another year with the uncertainty that you still don't have these monies allocated. You're supposed to have them, but don't have them yet. And for some First Nations, because part of the formula they're looking at are population based, they are. So some First Nations would be getting quite significant payments out of this. And it matters, I expect, to all of you a fair bit. So we're going to need, if he agrees, the Ontario Regional Chief to send a pretty demanding response to the federal minister, Guilbeault. He's the Minister of the Environment, to stop hiding behind his chair and get out and make this decision and get the money flowing, and reiterate that if they do that, if they commit to reopening, that all of the 2% in the following year will go to First Nations, and that they develop a working group with you and them to figure out how to make the individual household rebates more accessible for First Nation members, then at that point we will drop the legal case because we will have effectively won it without having to argue it in court. And they know that those are our terms, and they've agreed to them in principle as soon as they, as well as pay you back for all the costs of doing this work, by the way, as well. Canada needs to do that. They've agreed to do that when we withdraw the case, but they're sitting on making their allocation decision and giving you the money for some reason for another at least 2 months. And this is nuts. This fast and loose holding back on your funding is not appropriate, and a lot more of that has been happening. And so now this is the kind of decision that the federal government is making about the allocation. And now I'm asking, and Kathleen will ask you all to support a big push to make it clear to Canada, this isn't their money, it's your money. It's not enough, but it's part of a statutory and fiduciary responsibility of Canada. And they need to stop acting as if it's their money and they can sit on it. And so they need to be told in no uncertain terms that the minister must make his allocation decision and distribute the funds, and we will end the case and we will work toward a better application of this statute for the future. Miigwech.
Thanks for that, Kate. So I just wanted to provide folks with just a little bit of information on what we have been working on. And we have been corresponding with Canada through letters so that there is a tracking mechanism. There has been a number of op-eds, there's been interviews, and now we will continue to push and we will draft a strongly worded letter from the ORC and Leadership Council to, we hope, we can only hope, because we have been advocating and pushing that Canada will come to the table in good faith, and that they will recognize and distribute those funds ASAP. So we do have more details on some of the recommendations that we are going to be pushing in the short term, and we will get that information out to you. We do have an environment dinner meeting on Wednesday night for those who are part of the Chiefs Environment Committee, and those who would like to come and hear some more information. But yeah, I just want to emphasize to everyone the importance of the funding and that an election could happen at any time. And I want to thank Kate for that update. And all this information is in your packages. So now, Kate, I'll bring you up again for another presentation. Another question. Oh yeah, questions. Sorry. I don't have one. I don't have one. Sorry. No. Do you?
Yeah.
Or- I wish we're going to a resolution that gave us a mandate to do this work.
Oh, okay.
Brain.
So at this time, I just want to say that there was no resolution to this presentation. I was told that after I said that there was a resolution, so I apologize. But I'm going to open the floor to any questions that there may be floating around on Zoom. No.
Good. I actually thought-
One question. Mike 3.
What question? Hello. Chief Archie Wabas, Waterman Lake First Nation. I've heard about this carbon fee or carbon tax for some time now. And I didn't know First Nation were supposed to be getting subsidized or getting money, because there was no consultation from Canada. For clarification, I want to know from where did the policy came from to to decide on First Nations will get 1%. Was that from the House of Commons, or there's a legislation that says that? Or is it just the policy under the federal government? Like, where's the law that says we're supposed to be giving First Nations 1%? That's what I would like to know. And the other thing is, I guess we've been accumulating funds for a possible distribution in the future. And what's the holdup again? Is it the these are the two things I would like to know. Where did that mandate come from for Canada to say 1% goes to First Nation on carbon tax?
It's not in the statute. It's a policy statement of the Ministry of Finance. So that's, and they gave us some information to show how they calculated it, but they figured that it was based on the amount of money that they guessed that First Nations, not your members, but just First Nations like administration was paying on the charge or would be paying on the charge. They guessed that 1% would rebate you,
Yeah.
which is not correct. They just
Yeah.
guessed.
It is not correct.
No,
Like, they should have consulted us,
yes,
First
and they
Nations.
did not. That's right.
and that didn't happen.
No.
Is that what we're arguing?
That's part of what we're arguing is that they set up the regime wrong without considering First Nations needs and situations and rights, and that they then administered it wrongly
Mhm.
by failing to change it when we told them that they had to. So it's both things. And why are they taking so long? I hope the minister is listening, because there's no excuse for it. This decision was supposed to be made last summer, and now they're basically going to be 6 months late, and it's your money they're sitting on. So I don't know why. They just keep telling us that it isn't made yet.
So we haven't taken it yet, yeah? We haven't took the money yet. eh?
No, they haven't. No, you have not. They have not made it available to you yet.
Okay. So I guess, what's the question here? Like, do we need to decide on something?
N- Maybe someone else can answer that. That's a political question.
And also, if that's the case, like, you know, I have no idea, like, I need a dialogue with, the chiefs
I don't
of, you know, I've never expected these funds to be, part of our discussion. But I heard about the carbon tax before. But, Canada never consulted us in terms of, the distribution of these, revenues. All right, thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Chief Wabash for that. So, I was I was rumbling over here. So why do we pay the lawyers when they have to call me up to answer the questions? But, couple things. There's to put it in context though, right? And so the carbon charge, when it was rolled out under the greenhouse gas emissions, there was a challenge to say that this is a tax and it's taxing our people and we're exempt under the Indian Act from being taxed, and it's a violation of treaty as well. And unfortunately, the federal courts found that it's in fact a charge and not a tax. So which means that they can levy it on products being sold into our communities. And so, the government has designed this program from, their perspective that they tax, heavy polluters, people that aren't, that are contributing to all of the climate issues, and that individuals, people can apply back to the government for rebates. So basically what they sell it as is that, the household pays so much money in carbon fees, carbon tax, and they can apply for it back, right? And so we have, went to court and said that our communities, a number of our communities don't file income tax, therefore they're not, this doesn't apply to them as like it does apply to other Canadians. What we have said is that for northern remote communities that, going on a heat pump or some sort of alternative source other than diesel fuel is not an option, right? It's just not possible. And so that's why the premises of the judicial review, we have been putting political pressure on the government to make that decision on that rebate. Now, Kate has explained there's not an actual dollar value to say First Nations in Ontario have paid X million of dollars and therefore you're owed it, because nobody actually knows. There's no way to track the money that our citizens, your citizens, pay on that and say that we have expensed that kind of money. We want that kind of money back. So it is really approximate estimate. We have let the minister know very clearly that we have an issue with the Métis having a set aside as well. And so I did meet with the minister a couple of weeks ago about this, and in front of him is the decision that is to be made, and that is what that rebate looks like. Is it going to be 2%, 1%? We're pushing obviously for as high as we can, and so why they haven't made that decision, unsure. There is a ton of money that has come off the backs of your citizens into the coffers of the government of Canada through the carbon tax, and there is a need for them to return some of that money. Now, there's a lot of consideration on this too, because I hear from in my community, people are paying that and saying, well, how are we going to get that directly back, right? And so we have passed a resolution at the last assembly saying we'll set up a trust system, and so when the government does make the decision, then we have to initiate that return and what that's going to look like. Because, I would say that, community band council buildings are having a significant impact by the cost of carbon charge to the organization or the community. But the real people that are, the ones that are definitely at the most being hurt by that is the homes, the homeowners, the families. Those ones are coming, out of their pockets to pay that. And so we have to think about what's the best approach when the government does make this decision, how to make sure that those who have paid the ultimately the fee are returned in a way that's compensatory to them. And just on the minister, I only met with him 3 weeks ago, asked him, I said, we want you to come and present and talk. Unfortunately, his schedule didn't allow, but we'll continue to pursue him to come to Chiefs and Assembly to answer to it. We're doing the lobby work that we can to get this decision. I'm not sure it's going to land where we want it to on the present, but we'll have to make the decision when we get there. Microphone 2.
The question is for Kate. So you mentioned that the government's not paying any interest on the monies that are being held back. I think that 300 million is in trust. So I presume that in those discussions in court, they were asked to pay interest on that money. And did the court make a decision that it would be paid or not paid?
No, the court has not made any decisions yet because after we launched the case, a couple of months after we launched the case, I got a phone call from lawyers for the federal government saying the minister is about to make an announcement to double the rebate to Indigenous peoples from 1% to 2%. And she made it in April. And thenceforth, we've been negotiating how to resolve this because if the Métis were out of the picture, that would have given us one of the big pillars of what we asked for in the court case. So the court hasn't ordered anything. The monies are not in a trust. They're in the general revenue fund and they're not earning interest for First Nations. And so it is yet something to be pursued from Canada is interest on that money. The 300 million does not include interest.
Okay. So are we then directing, I guess today, you to carry on with those discussions with the government to get interest on that money? Or are we passing a resolution to release the money so that it doesn't fall through the cracks if there's election change?
Yeah, I wish that we had news today. We were supposed to have had news today, actually, because Kathleen and I have been dealing with not the minister, but the other folks in Canada, telling them that this meeting was today and we wanted to be able to deliver the news or have had Canada deliver the news on that the monies were flowing. And here's the formula by which it will flow. We do know, by the way, it is 2%, but we do know that the vast majority of it will go to First Nations, but we don't know exactly how much and how much of that will go to Métis, but it'll not be that much to Métis because we did succeed on that point mostly. But we don't know is what the formula is to allocate amongst the First Nations yourselves. And I was hoping to have that to discuss with you today and to seek a resolution that based on the commitment from them to set up a working group and fund it so that you could sort out interest payments and a better system for individual First Nation members to collect their rebates and return of all your costs to pursue this, that the litigation could be dropped. We can't bring that to you today because he hasn't made that decision that would enable that to happen yet. And so I guess we have to come back in February.
So
for
based
that.
on other court awards, what is it like? What percentage are we likely to get in interest on this money?
Well, if they agree to pay anything, and I don't know if they will, and we may have to actually argue that part in court alone. It's the Courts of Justice Act governs that rate. I'd have to look it up what it is right now, but I don't know. When you go to court and get post-judgment or pre-judgment interest, it's set by the Courts of Justice Act. And I can come see you afterwards in chief and tell you what it is now, but it moves with the market.
Okay. So then is there enough time now, I guess, to put this issue before the court before the next election?
Oh, yeah. In fact, court cases don't change in the sense that even worst case scenario, we do know that Poilievre has publicly said axe the tax and that his intention is to take back this legislation and cancel it. But even when he does that, I am really confident he's not going to say that when it was in place and these monies were accruing and owed to First Nations, that now it's not payable because these monies are already owed when the act's still here. And so I don't think he would be stupid enough to say that money's already accrued to the date that he cancels the act aren't still owing. I think they would be. We have researched that even if Poilievre tries to say that, we can sue Poilievre, not him individually, but the Conservative government for breach of honor of the Crown and fiduciary duty, and I think we would win that. But I honestly don't think we're going to have to come to that point. So yes, the court case only ends when you decide it ends or when we've gone to hearing if we're not going to settle it, and we succeed or fail, like when the decision comes out. So it doesn't end even with the change of government. We can go seek interest at any point up till then.
So then what is the chiefs need to vote on or pass today?
Apparently there is nothing today.
Nothing, okay?
I
Just
think,
a-
but
an
I'm
update.
just asking that, you know, that you indicate somehow, and I'm not sure how that's appropriate because there is no resolution because of the minister delaying to give to you today, that you register your support, that that we need to deliver a strong message through the ORC to the federal minister to stop holding your money and to get it distributed now. And it better be all or next to all of the 2%. So that there's no resolution to that effect because that's the course we've already been on. But it would be great to be able to send a strong message that this was discussed at this meeting, and chiefs are angry, Minister, that this hasn't happened already, and they're directing you to get this done now. I don't know. I mean, a big yell, but there is no resolution.
All right, Chimigwech, for the information on that presentation, Chimigwech to the questions. We will be moving on to the next topic, which is the Trans-Canada Indigenous Property Tax Settlement. This one does have a resolution. I swear there's a resolution to follow this one. So at this time, I'm just invite Kathleen back up to, invite you guys back up to the podium.
Chief Taylor? Yes.
I'm just wondering, is Chief Taylor here? Okay, all right, okay. I'm going to call Kate Kempton up again to provide an update on the compensation for First Nations impacted by the Trans-Canada Energy Pipeline.
Okay, this will affect every single person in this room, and so it's appropriate that it come to all of you. Well, I have raised this before, but this is two First Nations, Araland and Ganugaming First Nations, and Chief Taylor from Ganugaming is right here, and we'll speak to this in a minute. Chief Sunny Gagnon from Araland was sick today, and he was unfortunately not able to make it, but there is a resolution that those two First Nations are bringing forward here. Years ago, 7 or 8 years ago, they commenced a challenge against what was then called Trans-Canada Pipelines, TCPL, now called Trans-Canada Energy, about this main line. It's the main pipeline that runs from Alberta all the way across the prairies and all the way through Ontario and down to southern Ontario, branches off and ends up stopping at the Quebec border. There are about 70 different, so there's a picture of it on this map here. It's actually 4 parallel pipelines, but it's all called the main line, and it's been delivering natural gas. So it's the natural gas that ends up being distributed by local distribution companies. A lot of it comes from here. It's not an oil pipeline, it's a gas pipeline. For the last 60 years, from where it's extracted further west and delivers it to various points all along the route. And so chances are high that if your community is on natural gas, it's coming from the what is transported along this pipeline, because there are various different distribution points from it that go off into local areas all along the route. Oh, sorry, wrong direction. And so this lawsuit started many years ago by Ireland and Ganuguming because they found out, one day that there were these giant machines and trucks and crews on their territories that were conducting what's called an integrity dig. And it was that TransCanada was out there with its crews checking on the physical integrity of part of the pipeline. It's an old pipeline now, and by law, and rightly so, they need to keep checking that it's safe and that parts of it are not leaking or rusting out or cracking. And so they conduct these tests all the time on the pipeline. A lot of it's done by computer and by pushing, shutting down part of it, diverting the gas to another parallel line, and then pushing water through to see if it's showing any leaks. But when any anomaly shows through any of that testing, they show up with their crews, and most of the pipeline is buried. And so they dig up parts of the pipeline, and it could be anywhere from a few meters long to a few kilometers long that they will dig up because it's buried. And they will then, if required, cut off part of the pipeline and replace it or repair it and put it back. And that's quite invasive work. And under the federal laws that govern this, it used to be the National Energy Board Act and various things, and now it's the Canada Energy Regulator Act and various other laws. For no pipeline company in that situation needs to consult and accommodate or do anything for any First Nations for old pipelines, even though they're causing new physical impacts from the maintenance on them. Because when pipelines get approved in this country, they get one approval at the beginning only. That single approval at the beginning is to construct the line, but also to operate it for its entire lifetime. So in theory, a pipeline company never has to go back to the Crown to get a new permit or approval. And if it doesn't have to get a permit or approval, those are the types of things that under Canadian law, which we all know is way too weak, that typically would trigger or require consultation with and accommodation of affected First Nations. But since no new approvals need to be sought for the whole life of the project, for new physical impacts from integrity digs or other things, and they weren't consulting at all. And these are old projects that were built before this duty to engage and accommodate First Nations was part of Canadian law. So you got nothing and you're getting nothing. New pipelines today, as we all know, are subject to new laws, new environmental laws, and new Section 35 based laws, where those companies are, in most cases, entering into impact benefit agreements, doing revenue sharing from what the pipeline generates. And TransCanada generates billions every year. Like these are huge, huge. This is huge money, huge companies. And for new pipelines, in many cases, the companies are negotiating part ownership of them by First Nations who wish to participate that way, like transmission lines, rail lines, many other things. Some First Nations are participating on multiple levels with these. For old pipelines, though, it's nothing. And so what Canadian law is currently saying is, if it's been there already, even though it harms you and has harmed you longer and harms you afresh, each time there's a new physical interruption, you still get nothing. You're too bad, so sad. We don't want to hear your complaints. To date, almost 300 of these integrity digs have happened in Ireland and Ganuguming's territories alone. So this is serious stuff, and yet nothing. And we went to them and said, look, this is ridiculous, folks. I mean, you've got to enter into an IBA with us and provide accommodation measures that include First Nations monitoring. Along the line, you should be hiring First Nations for that. First Nations doing spill and leak response, priority for First Nations contractors to do any of this work, archaeological assessments before you dig, and money to compensate and then some for the fact that you are using and occupying First Nations territories and physically harming them, not just originally, but every time you come back. The answer was no. They just kept saying no. And then we went to court and asked for the court to set new precedent whereby even without the need for a permit, the Crown and the company still had to consult and accommodate for integrity digs. The court, long story short, bailed on that decision. And we've been seeking to convince TransCanada through negotiations since that they need to do the right thing and negotiate some form of annual revenue sharing or compensation and other IBA type accommodation measures. And so we have a legal challenge in this country because of the way Canadian law is set up on the duty to consult and accommodate. It is a bad set of laws. It sounded okay when it first came out, but essentially it supports the unilateralism and not co-jurisdiction by First Nations. And it keeps getting decided in far weaker ways than it should be, not in every case, but in many cases. And it has said, the Supreme Court of Canada has already said that older projects that were built before this duty became part of Canadian law get a pass. So we have a tough legal challenge ahead. More recently, we've turned to another legal avenue, the Canada Energy Regulator, to order that TransCanada Energy, like we can't get them to date to agree to revenue sharing. So we're turning to the regulatory body, the CER, to order that TransCanada must pay First Nations the same payment to start, at least, that they have to pay municipalities and provincial governments as they pay those guys property taxes, and they have to by law. Nobody questions that. And those charges are part of TransCanada's rates that they charge back to their customers. And so TransCanada passes those costs of that property tax on. And we've said, well, wait a second, you're missing one form of government in this country called First Nation governments. You guys are ordering, and TransCanada pays municipalities and provinces for their lands that the pipeline crosses. Why are you not paying First Nation governments for the same type of thing? And we're engaged in a process before the Canada Energy Regulator to ultimately get them to agree to do this. Before we can make that application before the CER, we've actually met with the CER a few times. We are still engaging with TransCanada Energy and its big corporate customers to try to get them to agree that this kind of a charge or toll, equivalent to what they have to pay Crown governments, must be paid to First Nations. So basically, TransCanada gets charged this and then passes it on to its corporate customers so that you get paid as governments the same as Crown governments do for that part of your territories that the pipeline goes through. 70 First Nations, at least, probably have territory through which the pipeline goes. And it would be 140 million at current value today, split between 70-ish First Nations. So again, per year, that means something. And then we would also be saying to TransCanada, you also have to negotiate all those other things I talked about into an impact benefit agreement. Again, this doesn't cost TransCanada anything out of pocket if the CER agrees to it, because they pass it on to their customers, right? It's basically distributing the wealth of the country and having some of it end up with First Nations, which it doesn't right now from this pipeline. And so the part of this hearing process that the CER has just commenced, which is to set new rates for the TransCanada pipeline. We want them to set those rates so they include this toll that is paid to First Nations. But part of that process is that TransCanada engages itself with its own big corporate customers to try to come to an agreement on what the toll should be. It's called a tolls task force. So TransCanada sits in a room behind closed doors with its big corporate customers and works out what it's going to charge those customers, and those customers and TransCanada all try to agree to that. And if they agree on that, they take that agreement to the CER and say, we've reached an agreement. And the CER, they hope, will rubber stamp it and say, good. It's the same kind of principle. And if you're familiar with criminal law, where the prosecutor and the defense counsel will agree on a sentencing, right? And they take the agreed sentencing to the judge, and the judge almost always agrees to it. The problem with that is, guess who's being kept out of the tolls task force room? First Nations. We've told them you need to include First Nations. We've told them what this proposal is. We've told them that they're in your backyards, in your territories, and that we ain't seen nothing yet in this country in terms of taking back the land and jurisdiction over it. So it's inevitable that they're going to have to deal with you. They refused to let First Nations participate. They refused to allow the First Nations' own lawyer, who knows their whole statutory regime, to go into the meeting with them. They did agree to have one token meeting with the First Nations, but they refused to let the lawyer in the room, me, to be able to translate all of the statutory legal language. So it's a grotesque situation that we're facing. We're going to keep hammering away at the CER and hammering away at TransCanada. And at the end of the day, we may end up either or both in court, because that court case we brought, which seeks the court to order that TransCanada must engage and consult and accommodate First Nations for these integrity digs each time they happen. And the CER, where we're trying to get this toll payable to First Nations to be ordered, that has to be paid from here on in as part of TransCanada's rates. We may end up arguing in both forums. But the chances of us succeeding in the CER forum, and if we do, we won't need to pursue the court case, will increase vastly if it's clear that First Nations all along the line are standing up together on this. It's about time. 60 years and you've got a big fat nothing from these old pipelines. This, if we succeed in convincing anybody here that old projects that still exist and still do harm in your territories do not get a pass anymore, that they have to be doing the same things that new projects automatically have to do now, will change the landscape in Canada. If we get that here, then in some ways it will have to happen for other, not old dead projects, but old projects that are still alive and still causing harm. August 2023, TransCanada agreed that they would negotiate this toll with us. We had a major breakthrough, and ORC Glenn Hare and Chiefs of Ontario's staff, including Kathleen and others, myself, Chief Taylor, Chief Tuito from Aeroland, and financial experts we've retained who came up with this toll idea, We're at this meeting with vice presidents of TransCanada Energy in their office here in Toronto, in Toronto. And they agreed, they heard us, they would negotiate this toll. 5 months later, in December 2023, they said, we never agreed to that, you're lying. They called the ORC a liar. They called the two chiefs a liar. And then they said, as long as you've got the court case outstanding out there in the background, we're not going to talk to you at all. You need to drop the court case. And if First Nations drop a court case, you can't go back and bring it again. So TransCanada is saying, you have to trust us. You can't have any legal backstop here that we're going to do the right thing, even though we've refused to do it all along. And if you drop the court case, we might talk to you. Those are bad faith assertions and positions of TransCanada Energy. So what we're going to be doing next is building this PR up around this. It is not two First Nations negotiating on your behalf, not at all. But the reality is that these two First Nations have been doing the work and incurring the costs, and for a time with the help of Chiefs of Ontario when there was funding available for it. Because whatever toll is set, the CER cannot and would not, even if they could, order that it just be payable to two First Nations. It would apply across the pipeline. Tolls are set across the whole infrastructure, which means that it would benefit all of the First Nations along the line. It's just like a court case brought by 1 or 2 or 10 First Nations sets a precedent that affects many, if not all, First Nations. It's just the way it works. And so we hope that First Nations here are generally in support of this. It's happening. The two First Nations, Araland and Ganuguming, have been carrying this for some time, and it's where the rubber hits the road. In 2025, the CER thing becomes real, and we can't put the court case on hold anymore. It would have to be activated by the end of in 1 year from now. So we have 1 year to enter into a big campaign to convince this TCE, TransCanada Energy, and the CER and the big corporate clients that this has to happen. It is the right thing to do because all First Nations, or many of you, are standing up together saying it's about time we need to do this. And I'm going to turn it over to Chief Taylor from Ganuguming First Nation.
Good afternoon, everybody. Miigwech, Kate. I'd like to introduce myself. Wachke Nimki Benesekwe. Chief Sherry Taylor, Ganuguming First Nation, Ogamakwe. I'd like to first acknowledge the lands that we're gathered here today. I'd like to thank Fort William First Nation for allowing us to be here. And also acknowledge that there's sacred items in the room, the drum and the elders for the prayer. Very sorry I missed the opening this morning, but you may be aware that in Ganuguming, right now we're dealing with a crisis with the bridge closure in our community. So as Kate has explained to date, what's been happening and where we are in regards to seeking fair compensation for all First Nations, not just mine and Araland, impacted by TC Energy's Canadian Mainline. You know, it was back in 2020, 21, I received an email from TransCanada Energy. And it was probably like a common email that a lot of us get in regards to a station that they were going to work on that they had to move. And it caught my attention. And I emailed them back and I said, you're not moving anything unless you come and talk to us first. I think too many times we allow big industry companies like TransCanada Energy to come and do whatever they want and take whatever they want, make money off of the resources that our treaty has said that we should be sharing. You know, a lot of us have a lot of issues in our community. I don't think I'd have an issue with my bridge today if we were compensated fairly, if we were treated fairly, if our children didn't have to go without. That's what this is about. This is about saying, we're not gonna take this anymore. We're not gonna just allow you to come in, take what you want, and use it for yourself. To me, that's not what reconciliation is. And from what I see today, they haven't done anything. It's like they're protected. Like they have this grandfathered in evergreen because it was done before Section 35. And I'm not even talking about the Section 35 giving us these rights. We've always had them. We didn't need Section 35 to tell us we have the right to govern and to our self-determination as First Nations people. I'm not going to raise the resolution today. I've been informed that there is more work that needs to be done on the resolution, and I'm open to that. Like I said, I'm not here for myself, but I'm here to push and raise the bar for our people, for our communities, to be compensated and to be heard and to be treated fairly. That's why this matters. And that's what I wanted to bring to your attention. Because all they're willing to do is to provide us with trinkets. I'm sorry, but that's not going to cut it. So what we have before you is we're going to have a resolution. I'm going to be moving it. My dear colleague, Chief Sunny, isn't here today, but I think we're going to look at this resolution within the next couple of days to give it some time to add some wording that's going to make everybody feel comfortable and have their needs met. And I'm willing to do that as a First Nations leader. So with that, I just want to say thank you for your time, for listening. You know, it's a long road. It's always a fight. But you know, when we fight together, when we stand as one, there isn't nothing that's going to stop us. So with that, Miigwech, I'd say thank you and have a good day. And I'll be here throughout the meeting if you have any questions. Thank you.
Chimigo Gimakwe. No, it's as a young person hearing that, talking about all of us standing together, that really warms a certain spot in my spirit. So I was informed once again that there is a resolution to this, but honestly there is. But we will be looking at it either tomorrow or the next day. They're going to make some modifications to some of the wording. Oh my goodness. All right, so at this time, we're going to go on to our next topic here, the Ontario Mining Act lawsuit. And there is a resolution to this one, I promise. I hope so. It says there is. All right. 1 out of 3. We're going to get it. So at this time, I'm going to welcome up Chris and have fun.
All right, thanks so much.
question?
Can I make a comment? I need to
Comment.
make a comment on the previous presentation. Because previous presentation, hold off with the presentation on that one. I want to make a comment. I want to make a comment on the presentation that was made. Because I think we need to take control of our lands. Take control of our lands, okay? We've been here since time immemorial. That's true. And we can proceed with the legal lawsuits and litigations. Because the other side are not listening. And also at the same time, we should create opportunities for our people, for our business people that can leverage, take the opportunity to turn that into their, our own that transmission line, own that infrastructure, and we make money out of it. That kind of a consideration as well, we should also include that in our back of our minds, is to take control, take ownership of these infrastructures in our properties, in our territories. Create some wealth out of these business opportunities. That's what I would like to kind of convey to my fellow chiefs and the presenters. All right. There's two sides of things that I look at. Okay, we go legal action against the infrastructure owners that are exploiting our lands, and at the same time, we want to be the owners, the operators of that infrastructure or a business. Yeah, thank you.
Shimmy, come on.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So good afternoon, everyone. Just a quick overview of a couple things we've been working on in mining. So you'll recall about a year ago, there was a resolution passed by some chiefs from the Anishinaabe Nation on the MLAS system and the detrimental effects that that's been having. Another resolution we attempted to pass, I believe, in Six Nations, but we didn't get a mover and seconder. And that was to take a look at a potential lawsuit. But that didn't go through. And so I'm just saying that for your information. The presentation we're going to get now is from Kate Kempton on the mining issue. Again, this is independent from the work that Chiefs of Ontario had been doing. Just for your information, it's separate from what we were doing. This isn't a coup endorsed lawsuit. What they're going to be doing, though, is what Kate's going to be doing, though, is giving you some information about it. I believe 6 First Nations have independently put this forward. So this is for your information. And I believe the resolution coming after is a support resolution for your consideration. And without further ado, Kate Kempton.
I warned you. Okay. All right. Trust me, I'm not up after this, so apologize for this. But the Chiefs of Ontario staff were gracious enough to put these 3 topics together so that I didn't have to keep coming back. Yeah, I do want to say, by the way, I've done a fair bit of work with Chiefs of Ontario staff, Jay and others, to provide First Nations with template mineral exploration agreements and template impact benefit agreements. I have negotiated hundreds of both, across what some call Canada, coast to coast to coast. And so I'm attempting to provide you with some access to information that I've had available in terms of what I think are demonstrated best practices in both forms of agreement. So you certainly ask Chiefs of Ontario staff to get access to those. I just provided updated templates for both to Jay in the last week. And the vast majority of work that I do and my clients do, my First Nation clients, is to enter into an agreement with an exploration company or a mining company, whereby those companies respect the jurisdiction of the First Nation, because exploration agreements are basically an exercise of jurisdiction, where the First Nation is saying, well, you've got your Crown permit over here, but you also need ours. And this is ours. These are the conditions by which you can get our consent to carry out mineral exploration. And if you agree to these and carry these conditions out that include protection, control, and benefit measures, then you're able to go ahead under those conditions. Those exploration agreements all also contain a clause, every single one of them, that the company can't proceed to more invasive work and mining, developing a mine or anything like that without the First Nations consent. And so it embeds your jurisdiction into later stages as well. These agreements are binding on other companies that come along and acquire those interests in the mining claims or the project. So it to a certain extent runs with the land. But the problem here is that the Ontario government, unlike, I would say, when I started this work 20 years ago, and you know, I was lead counsel for Kitchener-McKizzip and Innuwag when we won that big injunction against Platnex, and then for many other First Nations in getting injunctions against mineral exploration. That was in the era when the Mining Act had not been changed at that point for 100 years, and that no permits were required for exploration activity. And because of those court cases, the provincial government sat down and agreed that it needed to change the Mining Act, and it did. 2008 made some changes. Those changes were, you know, made it better than it was before. And what they did is require that proponents needed to apply for an exploration permit or a plan before they could come on the land and do physical exploration work. Before that, they didn't have to. They would stake a claim and just show up with their drill and start drilling away, called free entry. When we got the act changed the first time in 2008, a lot of people did a lot of work on that. And back then, we all were saying to the Ontario government, you also need to require that nobody can stake a mining claim or register a mining claim on lands without engaging with those First Nations first. And Ontario ignored us about that. Now we're back in court again, challenging that. This time, 6 First Nations, and it is open to others who may want to join or intervene in support. Abitibi Anishinaabe Nation, Chief June Black is here. Airland First Nation, Sunny Gagnon may be here tomorrow. Attawapiskat First Nation, Chief Sylvia Kustashin Matatawaban, I hope is online. Fort Albany First Nation, I'm not sure where Chief Elizabeth Kataquapic is. Gunigiming First Nation, you just heard from Chief Sherry Taylor. And Kitchener-McKizzip and Innuwag, I don't know if Chief Donnie Morris is here. But those 6 First Nations have joined together to bring this new case. And we hope that this sparks another set of changes to the Mining Act, because what we're looking for the court to do is to declare parts of it unconstitutional, as in violation of your rights. It is being brought not as a lawsuit, also called a legal action, but a shorter, simpler kind of a case called an application. And therefore, it is possible we could have a decision from the court in 1 to 2 years from now. There are 3 fundamental problems with the Mining Act that this case is challenging, we say are unconstitutional. The first is the registration of mining claims without any engagement with First Nations first. No consultation, no accommodation. Anybody paying a small fee to get a prospector's license from around the world can go online and register a mining claim, a square block of land, almost anywhere in the province of Ontario. You just fill out some forms and you press a button and boom, The problem with that, you don't need to engage, you don't need to notify the First Nations affected at all first. You don't need to do anything for First Nations. The problem with that is it's not simply a digital transaction that has no effect, which is what Ontario has been saying. Ontario has been saying, what do you care? The physical harm doesn't come until the expiration phase. And at that point, they do have to consult with you. No, that's wrong. As soon as a mining claim is registered on your lands, you are prohibited under the Mining Act and the way that the Mining Act operates under Canadian law from having those lands set aside as reserve, unless you can convince the holder of those claims to abandon them first. So, and if you can't have those lands as reserve lands. Secondly, you cannot have those lands turned into Indigenous protected conserved areas or parks. Third, you can't fully govern. You know, we're going for co-jurisdiction or return of jurisdiction, governance and control over your lands, not your reserves, but your lands in other cases and in other forums for First Nations. Well, you can't exercise governance over an area that belongs to somebody else. Mining claims are property interests and property rights in land. No, the holders don't own them, like it's not fee simple, but it's a bundle of property rights that the holder of those claims, somebody you don't even know that could live next door or around the world. And as soon as a mining claim is registered, therefore, you can't like really fully govern that land. You're further disconnected from it, inability to take back your jurisdiction. And fourth, those lands can't be withdrawn under the Mining Act. And so there's a provision, I think it's Section 35 of the Mining Act, that says that First Nations who want to protect, it's a week anyway, but it provides something where First Nations who want to protect certain values, burial grounds, or sacred sites or other important sites of cultural value, you can apply to the ministry to have those lands withdrawn under the Mining Act regime. So they're marked in black on MLAS. They show is not available for staking of claims or exploration or mining. That's withdrawn. But as soon as a mining claim is staked on those lands, you can't withdraw them. And you don't know when a mining claim is going to get staked because you don't get notified first. And so the moment a claim is staked, you're poached. That's unconstitutional. The whole thing is unconstitutional. In two other provinces, the courts have recently found, now the regimes are somewhat different. And this case is not a slam dunk, but BC and Quebec, recently their courts have held that this open free entry staking a claim wherever you want without engaging with First Nations first is not legal. And so we're going to be pulling on that precedent, those precedents to have that apply here as well. But that's one problem, the mining claims or mining registration. 2/3 of the province of Ontario is subject to mining claims right now. The last couple of years, you've probably all seen a deluge of mining claims staked in your territories. It's like the Yukon gold rush all over again, but all the way across Ontario. Why? Because Ontario's critical mineral policy is encouraging and incentivizing miners in mineral exploration and staking of claims are steps before mining, which all might be fine as long as you were engaged first, but you don't have to be under the Mining Act, and that's unconstitutional. The second big problem is we did get the Mining Act changed in 2008 to say that the Crown and companies needed to consult and accommodate you before they could engage in exploration on those mining claims. But for the last several years, Ontario's system of so-called consultation of First Nations in respect of exploration permits has been so weak as to be grossly insulting. What the government of Ontario does is send out form letters saying so-and-so is applying for an exploration permit or a plan. We prejudge this to be, you know, lower impacts. We're not going to look at cumulative impacts just because we don't. We're not going to pay you any money to engage in research or any internal consultation to determine what these impacts might be on you and how to prevent them. But you need to tell us what these impacts are and how to prevent them. So you have to spend your own money to do that. And you have to tell us within 30 days. Because if you don't, we're going to issue the permit. So that's what these form letters say. And then when First Nations get back and say, whoa, whoa, just a minute, we have concerns about this exploration occurring in this area. The only thing that the province will do is extend the time before they issue the permit. They'll say, oh, well, we'll put this application on hold for another 30 to 50 days. But during that time, they don't provide you with any funding to do any research. They do nothing. It is so bad as to be grossly insulting to your rights and your stature and status. That's not consultation or accommodation the way it was meant to be, which is engaging government to government. And today with UNDRIP, it means to acquire your consent. It's a sham. And so that system of so-called consultation we're challenging also is unconstitutional. And finally, the third problem with the Mining Act that we're challenging is it's racist. There's a bunch of protections in the Act for settler interests in land. So there's a list of types of property interests in land that proponents can't stake claims over those lands. And also reserves. They can't, because reserves are deemed federal land under Canadian law, so proponents can't, under Ontario law, can't stake claims on your reserve under the Mining Act without your consent. But across your territories, your rights and relationship and jurisdiction over your lands isn't respected at all. And yet, a variety of settler interests, private homes, churches, transmission lines, all things introduced by settlers, those are protected interests where automatic registration of mining claims can't happen. But not one of your interests in or jurisdiction over your lands is protected, and we're saying that's a violation of your equality rights. So we are seeking declarations from the court that those parts of the Mining Act are unconstitutional. And we're also seeking a declaration that all mining claims currently registered on the MLAS when we go to court that don't also have exploration permits issued for them should be declared void. Because there's a whole bunch of them that have just been registered all over the place in the last couple of years. And we're seeking an order that the Crown needs to go off and correct those parts of the Mining Act that are declared unconstitutional by engaging with you. It must be done pursuant to United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. So there's a draft resolution. I'm going to stop there for your support for this. And we're not looking for your monetary support or to join the case, just your political, I guess, support to say that, you know, that this is recognized as an important thing to do. And that, you know, frankly, even if unsuccessful, it won't get worse than it is now. The good thing about a case like this is there's no real, like, it won't get worse than it is now. But given the two recent cases that found that these free entry mining registration regimes are unconstitutional in BC and Quebec, I'm increasingly optimistic that we have a good shot at this in the court here in Ontario. And so we're looking for your, if you will, verbal or political support. But I will also reiterate that anybody who wants to join in or intervene as well, it's not what this resolution's about, free to talk to me or any one of those chiefs later if you wish, because you're also free to do that. But that's what this case is about. This Ontario government has literally reverted us back 70 years. when the old promotional video for the government, the province of Ontario was saying, you know, don't some of you remember this? It used to be all over the TV saying, give us a place to stand and a place to grow and call this land Ontario. That old video showed things blowing up all over the province. Kaboom, give us a place to stand. Kaboom, give us a place to grow. What were those? Mines. We're back to 1960s all over again. Mining can be fine, but not over your objection or without you or with completely ignoring you, which is what is happening now. So all we're trying to do, we're not trying to stop mining, but is to get this to be respectful of your jurisdiction and status and rights so that when it happens correctly. Miigwech.
Chimigwech. So at this time, we will be going to the resolution. Right on. Told you we get it one of these days. Just kidding. All right, so this resolution is draft resolution 2431A. Subject supporting First Nations free, prior, informed consent rights in mining case. Mover is Chief Sherry Taylor. Seconder is Chief Sunny Gagnon. Yes? Awesome. Whereas is our 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh. Is Chief Sunny here? No. So then do we?
But no, but Chief Black is here. I'm gonna, she's here and she's one of the plaintiff First Nations, so she may replace that.
Okay. Ogima Black, are you going to be the seconder for this? Yes. Okay. Oh. Question or? Question. Okay. You can come to the mic. Microphone.
Bonjour. Bonjour. Nishnabekwe, Nishnakas. I'm from Myrna is my name, my English name, and I'm from Gull Bay First Nations. I don't know if we have our chief here from Gull Bay. I don't know if he's here attending this meeting. Oh, he's in Toronto. Okay. So anyway, I just come here. I hear first time attending a chief's meeting. And we saw this online. This meeting was going to take place. And I hear about all these issues that were being brought forward here today. And yes, we like to have those funds that I never heard of, those health funds and other funds that are talking about here just recently. And we would like that to be given to the First Nations, especially the minings and all that's what they're talking about. Because to let you know, when they first mentioned mining was mentioned in our reserves, when the mining people came, they said they were promised to give jobs to these people in our reserve. And some people had jobs, but I'm just telling you, my cousin worked in the mine for 10 years.
Excuse me,
yeah.
and Schnabekwe.
Yeah.
Okay. This is a chief's assembly, and it is public in that everyone can watch the assembly online. The protocols that we have for the assembly it's for chiefs to speak, but if somebody else wishes to speak, one of the chiefs has to have them recognized to speak to the issue that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
So we apologize. I'm just assisting my youth colleague here.
Yeah.
If you look around the room, the red lanyards are the chiefs, and those are the ones that speak at the Chiefs Assembly.
Okay.
So normally the process would be if you have a chief ask for you to be recognized, and then we'll have you speak to whatever the issue is being discussed. So
I guess I came here really for a matter that was, I don't know if it's on the agenda, but I would like to talk about the child welfare. Because my daughter came here to say you should try to get to this meeting. Maybe you'll get a chance to speak about our issue.
So there
that's
was
my
a,
case.
so there was a discussion on child welfare this morning. And
I
so we've moved on.
Yeah.
And it's very important because there are a lot of very important issues. And the issue right now is a resolution. We're right in the middle of a resolution dealing with mining. So
Okay.
I want to say thank you, Miigwech.
Okay.
We've heard what you've had to say.
Yeah.
And we need to continue on with the resolution that we're dealing with right now. So
Okay.
yeah, Miigwech and Shinabekwe.
Miigwech, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Shimigwech Adam and Shimigwech Anishinaabe for your words. So for the resolution, the whereas is being 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Therefore, be it resolved that we Chiefs in Assembly, 1, recognize and affirm that First Nations are the indigenous inherent rights holders and decision makers when addressing third party, Crown government and proponent use of and interference with the First Nations territories, including for the purposes of mining and mineral exploration. 2, support the First Nation applicants in their legal battle at the Ontario Superior Court, challenging the Ontario Mining Act regime as unconstitutional in violation of First Nation Section 35 of the Constitution and Charter rights. 3, direct the Chiefs of Ontario Secretariat to provide updates to and relevant discussion of this case at relevant mining task force or Northern Mining Coalition sub-table meetings as needed. Do the mover or seconder like to speak to the resolution? Microphone 1.
Yeah, good afternoon, Chief Sherry Taylor, Gunagamin First Nation. Wapshka Nimki Benesikwen Indishnikas. I support the resolution. Gunagamin is part of this this mining claim case that's going to court. We're trying to I guess what's happened is Ontario has been pretty much undermining First Nations rights right from the beginning. They don't accept our protocols. You know, we send those things in, we send our protocols and, you know, our processes, our own ways of the way we would like to see the land and the water handled, the way we would like to go about having accommodation. So we send those into the government, and the government fails to send those out to different stakes, mining claims that are being staked online. So what happens is that's bypassed and they're given free entry into our communities online. And when that happens, you know, that really sets us back as First Nation when we're moving forward in protecting certain areas that we do not want mined or that we want to stay in. You know, as my First Nation Gunagamin, we're in a treaty land entitlement negotiations, and that process with the way it's set up today is hampering us to get our land back. There's mining claims every day and you know, so they're staked online, and by the time they're staked online, there is no reversing them. So it's very hard for us to have lands that are unencumbered. And so Ontario is just not making it easy. So we have no choice to do it this way. You know, I just find that their practices are very colonial. They're very racist. We had Minister Prairie who said right out in public that the Northern Ontario land is open and begging for drill holes. Like, that's not right. And that is so wrong of him to be saying something like that. In the meantime, they are pushing the agenda of reconciliation, and yet they come out with public address like that. Well, I have something to say to him. We don't have empty lands. Our lands are there. It's part of who we are. And that's why we need to continue to stand together and fight to stop them from doing what they're doing, because it's not helping. In order for us to have a future for our children that I can leave behind as a First Nation leader for children that are here and yet to come, this is what needs to be done. So I fully support this miigwech.
Miigwech Ogima. Microphone one, Ogima Quet.
Chief June Black, Abitibi and Anishinaabe Nation. Yeah, this is a huge issue for us. Very huge. I just want, you've heard a lot of information from Kate, as well as Ogima Quay Taylor. But I just want to add some numbers to that. Currently in our territory, we have 40,000 claims right now. We are receiving on a daily basis about 5 claims a day. I'm so sick of hearing that on my phone. I turn my phone off because I know what it means. Our First Nation has 7 IBAs, okay? So mining is not new for us. And we have 2 that are currently being negotiated. We have dozens of exploration agreements, but just of recent, they have now put claims near our sacred burial ground. Like we just sent a letter in. Now that's just too much. The mine that they're proposing, which is going to be huge, and I don't know how many of you know of Detour Mine, but that's a huge mine. Well, this is going to be big. And do you know how far that is from our community? 7 kilometers. Like what? And another fact about our First Nation is that we have an artesian well. So we're drinking spring water in our First Nation. And that spring water runs from our First Nation clear across 30 miles. There's spring water that connects all the way our territory. So we've been drinking that water since time immemorial. Right now, another huge issue is that we still live off the land. We still harvest our moose. We still fish. We still trap. We still paddle down the river and shoot a moose or on the lake. And you know what's happening to our moose? They're deceased. There's disease now. I was cutting a liver and I found tumors on that liver. I said, what the hell is this? It was shocking. And I said, we're in trouble. It's too close. We have got to do something. I think as communities, as First Nation communities, we need to stand up and we need to say, whoa, slow down here. Okay, people that live in urban areas, like, it's no big deal, right? It's like, okay, they're mining 300 miles that way. Well, we're there in those 300 miles. That's our home. And they don't seem to care about us. We're human beings. And they don't care. So if we have to go to court and put a stop to this, then that's what we'll do. And if it's going to cost us money, then it's going to cost us money. But at least we're going to be putting a stop to some of it. I mean, it's so obvious, their strategy, what they do, right? Oh, well, we have overlapping. Well, you got that First Nation, this First Nation. Oh, well, they've signed yes and no, but you're saying, no, what's too bad? They've already said yes. Another issue. And I don't want to be fighting with my fellow First Nations. My goodness. I want us to work together and to protect our people. And it's my community that's saying, no more mining. And I said, okay, we brought them in. They heard us. They heard our community say no more mining. One youth about your age, I guess, the chairperson there, he brought his little daughter's baby in there. And he told that mine, he took a glass of water and he put it on the floor. And he said, that's my baby's water. He said, I dare you to come and take that away from her. That's what he told the mining company. And that was a strong message. So that's the reality, right? That's exactly the reality, is that we're going to have nothing left. We're not going to have our animals to eat. We're not even going to have our water to drink. We're going to be like any urban area. That's what's going to happen. So I just wanted to put some numbers and inform you a little bit. Chimigach.
Jimmy Gwetch, Gilgama Black. Any more discussion, dialogue, questions maybe? Zoom? Mic number 2.
Good afternoon. James Cutfeet, proxy for Kishnamuk Benenwak, one of the litigants for the against the mining process. March 2006, I was jumping into a cab in Ottawa. I was with the I was one of the senior executives at the time with the federal government. And I happened to look at the paper in the back of the taxi, and then in small space at the bottom of the page, it said First Nations, da-da-da-da. So I turned to that page, and whose picture did I see? My brother's. You know, about half a page was devoted to the picture of this. That was when Platniks started molesting. I'll just use that. Molesting our lands. Snuck in, free entry. And our community stood up to the company. I am saddened to hear what the Gumakwia Black said. We are being invaded again. The second invasion, I would call it, without us really knowing, because it's all digital. So when the Platniks situation finally came to a halt. Platnex was, appeased with, $5 million payout to maintain an agreed-to moratorium. That moratorium is coming to an end soon. And Chief Morris would like to plan something as to how to, address the issue of mining in our territory. And the elders in our community, their understanding was that the land was to be shared, not one-sided. It was supposed to be shared. And we have 14 treaty affidavits to that effect from our elders. Those were, signed November 2015. Most of those elders have gone beyond. Platnex again in 2016 said, I would like to come back onto your land and then you'll prospect on it again. And I had replied back when I was in the position of leadership to the effect that, KI would be at the table as long as we were equals at that table. He never replied back. I think it was this past spring. He chartered into our community, wanted to come on to into the community, but he was held off at the airport. The OPP escorted him back to his aircraft and told him to leave. So aside from what we don't see happening, the staking of claims, these these companies can get aggressive, and it's for their own benefit. It's been said, with the Trans-Canada Pipeline that we don't, First Nations that are impacted don't get benefit from it. That's the same thing with mineral extraction. We don't get benefit from it. Yeah, menial benefits, labor employment for our people. So I would, ask with this resolution that is, before the chiefs in virtual land and here in this physical space, to help us fight what is happening. It's like we're being invaded again for the second time, as if we're not a peoples at all, because of the way the digital system works. It doesn't give a damn about people. So that's what I had wanted to say to encourage you to support the resolution, because what's happening outside of our communities, slowly creeping into our communities, we need to support one another. Thank you. Mitch.
Very good. All right, so at this time, I'm going to So I'm going to call for a question at this time. Question has been called. So any opposition online? Seeing none. Abstentions? Online? Going? So seeing no abstentions, it is carried through unanimous consent. Yeah. So now I'll turn it over to the Grand Master himself, Mr. Adam.
Very generous. I thought he was going to make reference to the comment about the young co-chair. I looked at Vera and said, "She talking about me?" No, she's not talking about you. So we're doing well for time. Next agenda item is at 4 o'clock. So what we'd like to do is proceed with resolutions. So I'm going to go to the resolution package, and you should all have the resolutions. This will help out tomorrow and the next day. So the next resolution in the packages, I believe we don't have the mover and the seconder. So we're going to move forward. So resolution number 2432A, we do not have the mover and seconder. There's some work to do on that resolution, so we will come back to that tomorrow or Thursday. The next resolution in the package is 2433A. It's titled Establishing a National Native Alcohol and Drug Abuse Program, NADAP Steering Committee. The mover is Ogama Tim Ominika, who is here. And seconder is Chief Sherry Lynn Hill, who I believe is here. Okay, she'll be right back. I don't know if somebody wants to have a look to see if she's nearby, but we do have the mover present. Just for it's Ogama Ominika. That's how you pronounce? Okay. I was going to get you to help me out. Okay. It sounds like Chief Hill is on her way. Is she close by? Mike 2 might be willing to second. I'm not sure, but I'll go to Mike 2, but I think Chief Hill is very close. Mike 2.
If need be, I'll second the motion in Sherry's absence.
Okay. I believe she's very close by, and she is, I'll say she's in the room. Okay, Chief Hill is in the room. So the resolution is before you. It's in your packages. I will not read the entire resolution. I'll go to the final page. Therefore be it resolved. It says, therefore be it resolved. And again, I'll have it put up on the screen. That we, the Chiefs in Assembly, 1, direct the Chiefs of Ontario Health Sector to establish and coordinate a NADAP steering committee. That's committee. 2, direct that the committee establish a terms of reference to define a committee membership to be comprised of representatives of First Nations, NADAP Treatment Center directors, ORPAC members, and senior officials from Indigenous Services Canada and First Nations and Inuit Health Branch. B, committee objective to identify policy recommendations for enhancing NADAP programming and securing new equitable investments for capital and programming funding to community-based NADAP programs and First Nation NADAP treatment centers. C, the main responsibility of the committee to establish a strategy for expansion of new and enhancement of community-based mental health and addictions programming and First Nations-led treatment centers. D, an annual requirement for the committee to provide status update reports to the Chiefs of Ontario, Chiefs in Assembly. 3, call on Indigenous Services Canada and First Nations and Inuit Health Branch to provide the Chiefs of Ontario Health Sector the necessary resourcing to support the committee and its work. 4, direct the Chiefs Committee on Health to provide oversight and political support for the committee. So that is the resolution. The mover and the seconder are in the room. Mover, any comments or do you wish to speak to the resolution? So microphone number 1.
Ani, gima Timonica Wikompong. Yeah, just moving this resolution or moving it for this assembly, just meeting with our NADAP program back home and understanding some of the impacts we're currently having within our First Nation community. We know what's happening globally, the substance of abuse that's are occurring in our First Nation communities. I've been meeting with our NADAP program back home and understanding that a lot of our members who are looking to get support with respects to treatment options is currently limited within our community where we do offer NADAP services. And one of them is the capacity and funding availability. When speaking with our executive director within our First Nation, she has been really stating that they've been strongly advocating or sending a proposal for additional sourced funding to support the needs that are currently we are facing within our community. We also have a number, as all of us here with our chiefs in Ontario, have our neighboring First Nation communities close by. And when they are looking for treatment options and support, unfortunately, those beds are unavailable. And, you know, we're looking at more sourced funding to support our program back home with other programs across Ontario and nationally. And I do understand that the NADAP programming has been asking for a number of years, or if not even over decades, is that they have not gotten no increases for wage parity, also for capital funding, or even operation and maintenance. So bringing this resolution here this week, looking at how we could support our NADAP programming that are located within our First Nations, would also complement to support any other neighboring First Nations that offer the same services. And we do understand that substance of abuse, along with mental health issues, all stems down to the grassroots level of what all the social determinants of health we're currently facing in our First Nation communities. So if we could get more support with respects to these areas, I think we'd be at a good starting point to start addressing all of the traumas that are impacting our First Nation communities, which is why I brought this resolution forward to support it. Miigwech.
Miigwech, Ugama Amanika. Seconder, Chief Hill, microphone 2.
Chief Sherry Lynn Hill, Six Nations of the Grand River. Nope, he said it all. And I think the other part about it is saves lives. In our communities right now, we're losing so many. This will just help to save lives. Yeah.
Miigwech. So the resolution is before you. There's an opportunity if you have any questions or comments online as well. Second call. Any more discussion? Third call. Any more discussion on the resolution? If not, I'm going to call for question. Question's been called. Thank you. Resolution is before you. Any opposition to the resolution? Any opposition? Any opposition? Looking online, I see none. Any abstentions? Any abstentions? None online, nothing online. So with that, resolution is carried by consensus. Yeah, Miigwech. Thank you. Good.
Right, sir. Resolution 2434, Canada Water Act Engagement Funding. It's moved by Chief R. Donald Miracle, seconded by Chief Todd Cornelius. Chief Miracle, Chief Cornelius. They're in the room. Chief Cornelius is online. Okay, thank you. So whereas 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, therefore be it resolved that we, the chiefs in assembly, 1, direct the Ontario Regional Chief to write a letter to Minister Guilbeault requesting its sufficient funding for our First Nations pre-engagement plan on the Canada Water Act that includes the following. 1, pre-engagement planning for the Ontario region, legal analysis. B, creation of a water stewardship governance table for the Ontario region. And C, develop a position paper on the Canada Water Act that can feed into Canada's position paper. That is the resolution. Chief Miracle, Chief Cornelius, would you like to speak to the resolution? Chief Miracle?
Canada has legislation in place to make all of this happen, and we need to be part of it to protect our interests. And so we need representation in this process to make sure our voices are being heard and not through somebody else that's never been to our communities.
Chief Cornelius?
Oh, yeah, I just agree with Chief Miracle. Water is life, and I just agree with what's being said. Yeah, go.
No go. Any other comments, questions on the resolution? Any other questions, comments? Any other questions, comments, clarification on the resolution? It's been moved and seconded. It's been moved and seconded. It's been moved and seconded. Questions called? Those against the resolution? None? Anybody abstaining from the resolution? No? All right, resolution is carried. Miigwech, miigwech, miigwech. Here.
Really giving the camera people a hard time here. Every time I come to the mic, it's like half my face is cut off. I just crouch down like this. Is this good? No, I'm just kidding. All right. So moving on to the next resolution, resolution 2435A. Subject, process and development of an AFN position papers United Nations meetings. The mover is Chief Joe Muskokamon, Chippewa of the Thames. I believe he is online. Oh, he's not online anymore. And the seconder, Chief Gary Duquette Jr. of Doquis First Nation. Is he online or is he here?
Is he here? Not online.
He's not online, and he's not here. So at this time, I'm going to ask for a mover and a seconder for this resolution. Mover? Chief Jacobs? Proxy. Got it. Did we get that? Has that been got? Beautiful. And a seconder. Chief Janelle Mabin of Amjanong, Chimigwetchogimakwe. So, whereas 1, 2, 3, therefore be it resolved that we chiefs in assembly, 1, direct the Ontario Regional Chief to present this resolution to the National Chief and Executive Committee of the Assembly of First Nations, communicating the Chiefs of Ontario's position pertaining to the process and development of a national position papers, including the following key points. 1A, AFN position papers must be developed and vetted by regional chiefs committees. 1B, AFN position papers must be presented by the chiefs at UN meetings. 1C, chiefs must negotiate AFN position papers at UN meetings. 1D, chiefs will rotate from a different region every year to attend UN meetings. 1E, AFN will be delegated to ensure this process is fair and considerate of all regional representation. 1F, AFN position papers must include a disclaimer on all documents, and 1G, AFN must be transparent and report back to the Assembly and Chiefs Committees upon returning from UN meetings. We have a mover and a seconder. So at this time, I'm going to call for question. Or, sorry, jumping the gun here a little bit. I'm going to ask the mover or seconder if they would like to speak to this resolution. Good? All right. Oh.
Hello, it's Janelle.
Oh, go ahead, Gimakwa.
Thank you very much. I support this because our First Nation has seen the results of advocacy at the UN level, and this is promising to other regions to be able to have a voice at that world stage. Miigwech.
Miigwech, Gimakwa. So now, at this time, I would like to call for question. Question has been called. So, any opposed, any opposition? Online, seeing none. Abstentions? In the room, online, seeing none. The resolution is carried through unanimous decision.
Miigwech, Pierre. So next resolution, I know we do not have the mover and the seconder in the room. I'm just going to check if they are online, but I don't think so. If not, I'm going to ask if we can have another mover and seconder. So the next one is Resolution 2436A. It's titled Bill C-61, the Proposed First Nation Clean Water Act, upon receiving royal assent. So that's the resolution. Again, the Proposed First Nation Clean Water Act. So the mover, I know, is not present, correct? And the seconder? Okay, so in order to proceed, okay, microphone 2.
Don Miracle, I'll move that resolution.
Thank you, Chief Miracle. So I need a seconder. Do we have a seconder? Yeah, just for the record, so that for note takers. Plus gives you some exercise, get the blood flowing.
Chief Karen Bell, Ketagonzibee Garden River.
Miigwech, thank you. So we have a mover and seconder. I will not read the therefore, or sorry, whereas. There are 6 of them. But I'll go to the final page. Therefore, be it resolved that we, the Chiefs in Assembly, 1, direct the Regional Chief and Leadership Council to advocate and direct Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs Canada, CERNAC, and Indigenous Services Canada, ISC, the Ontario region, have a minimum of 2 direct seats at decision-making tables for water regulations pertaining to the First Nations Clean Water Act. So that's the resolution. Fairly straightforward. Mover, seconder, any comments? Microphone 2.
So the Ontario region has 72% of all the boil water advisories in the whole country for drinking water, but source water has got to be protected as well. And the Ontario voice needs to be at that table, not through the AFN or somewhere else, but Ontario's voice needs to be strong there.
Thank you. Seconder, do you wish to? No, you're good? Okay. Any comments, questions, discussion? Second call, comments? None online. Last call, any comments? Questions being called, thank you. Resolution is before you. Any opposition? Any opposition? Opposition to the resolution? Nothing online as well. Any abstentions? Abstentions? Last call? Nothing online. So resolution is carried by consensus. Miigwech.
Resolution 2437A, the establishment of 2 SLGBTQ QIA and Council as a recognized principal entity within the Chiefs of Ontario Charter. It's moved by Chief Shelley Moore Frappier and Chief Adam Pabus. I need a seconder for this resolution. Chief. For the record, can we come to the mic? Thank you.
I'll second the resolution. Proxy Marla Maneg from Bosley First Nation.
Miigwech. Resolution is moved and seconded. Number of whereas is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Therefore, be it resolved that we, the Chiefs in Assembly, 1, support amending the Charter of the Chiefs of Ontario to include a 2 SLGBTQQIA plus council to act as an advisory council on issues impacting gender identity, visibility, and acceptance, and to ensure that the voices and perspectives of 2 SLGBTQQIA plus community members are represented. 2, direct the Chiefs of Ontario Women's Initiatives to secure adequate resources to support the establishment of a 2 SLGBTQQIA plus council. 3, direct the 2 SLGBTQQIA plus council to report annually to the Ontario Chiefs in Assembly. That is the resolution. Would the mover and or seconder like to speak to the resolution? Mike 1.
Just do it like this and start to, do my song and dance. We really got to make these for taller chiefs. Yeah, essentially representation matters. So having the voice of the 2 SLGBTQQIA plus is really important. We've heard that multiple times here in Assembly, that there's not always a safe space, and we have to take those steps towards making this a safer place here and in our communities for everyone. So I didn't hesitate in moving this resolution and moving forward to better representation, which makes everything better.
The seconder, would you like to speak to the resolution? Thank you. Is there any questions or comments on the resolution? Any questions or comments on the resolution? Any questions or comments on the resolution? Questions called. All of those against the resolution? Anyone opposed against the resolution? Anyone abstaining from the resolution? Anyone abstaining from the resolution? Anyone abstaining from the resolution? Miigwech. Resolution is carried. Miigwech, miigwech, miigwech. I'm going to invite my friend there, Barney, to come and present the resolution or the reflections. We're finished with resolutions, almost for a couple to come back tomorrow. But Elder Barney Batiste to do the reflections, and then Kieran Davis to do the reflections from the young people.
It's good.
You're good?
Yeah, it's good.
I know that.
It's really funny. I'm sitting down there trying to get up and sort of, there's Norma sitting beside me. Can I help you get up? We're both in mid to late 80s. Anyway, I think it's been a wonderful day. I think it's, I've heard nothing but positive here today. It's, always fighting the good fight, you know, and, going through the resolutions and the kind of things that are talked about. And, I think with much passion and caring. I enjoyed the passionate pleas about, care of our land, water, animals, and so on. It's, part of our heritage, really good. But the main subject matter today has been the child welfare, hasn't it? And it started with me early this morning with our own Grand Chief and talking about what's happening out there in the field. And it really triggered my mind. So I had this wonderful person in my life. And I'm going to go back to, I think it's the late 80s, mid to late 80s when this happened. And I was working with the thing called family violence back then. And I was looking for information. And she was working for the provincial government at the time. Matter of fact, I'll tell you, it was my daughter-in-law, who is now passed on. Recently, her later in life, she worked for Chiefs of Ontario and so on. So when I asked her when she was working for government for a little bit of help about what was going on in family violence and how I could understand it and how I could help, she wrote me this paper. I saved it over time. She ripped it out of a piece of scrap and said, here's what I know. I'd like to read this to you because I think it really lends itself to the child welfare that we're talking about. So she worked, it was originally called the Aboriginal Family Violence Program. Started as an interministerial working group in partnership with reps from the PTOs. The primary objective was to promote healing in communities by minimizing the bureaucracy and ad hoc funding sources. What they want to do is to achieve a one-stop opportunities. Leading up to this was the Crisis Intervention Program. When the program was going on, they recognized that the crisis never stopped, never went away. How would government and communities on and off reserve approach this differently? More effectively? The goal was to facilitate programming so that the workers could focus on delivering services and not only report writing. It started as a collaborative approach, designing programs that were needed. Aboriginal organizations even participated in dividing how the dollars would be distributed and proposal reviews. She says all this was good. Then she moves on, she says, now, however, I wonder what went wrong. Seems to have created even more paperwork and bureaucracy than was there before, than was there in the first place. We speak of helping our helpers at the community level do their jobs, wanting our nurses to nurse, not waiting through report after report. Then she goes on to write, what I remember when I think back to the development of the family violence program, it was a wonderful vision and empowering to be part of the decision-making process. So this was government and people working together. And this is the part that really gets me. I also remember on one particular difficult meeting, I was an employee of the Ministry of Health at the time, so maybe that added to the challenge. We had a young Native woman from the West Coast going through law school and doing placement at the Attorney General. On the night between the 2-day meeting, she hanged herself. It was a devastating but very real lesson. A reminder of why the program is important. The tragic irony, and this is the part that really gets me, the tragic irony is that we sat arguing in these meetings about money to prevent what happened directly to our group. So when I think about the program, I also think about that young woman. And she concludes by saying, what I hope and try to believe is that these associated programs are making things better for our communities, not more difficult. I suppose I like to believe that I was part of something good. So when you think about the program that we talked about this morning, about children, looking after children, do we want to fall into this trap? Arguing about the resources and about the money with the government and others while this stuff goes on out in the field. When our Grand Chief was talking to us this morning, that's what triggered my mind, because he told me, telling us that what was going on out in our backyard as we were trying to garner the resources that we needed to look after these people. The same as this story, which happened back in the 80s. And the thing is, I don't think we want to replicate that. We need to really be strong in our will to be able to look at. The thing is, what we don't want to argue about the money while these things are happening. It already happened here. I think we need to be stronger, proactive to be able to do those things. The will has to be there so that we don't replicate what happened here. Anyway, I'll leave you with that. I know it's not a real pleasant thought. I know that. And I know that we don't want to draw people down. We like to leave this meeting on a high. And the way to do that, I think, is to look at the last chapter of this letter. I suppose I'd like to believe that I was part of something good. So you would also like to believe that you are at the moment part of something good in the prevention of these things happening. And so in closing my statements, I'll leave you with that. And I know, listen, I know that there are several positive things that you've done here today. It's been a good meeting, a very good meeting. You've talked to each other generously and favorably. I didn't like, the one part I didn't like, when that woman came up and she says, Nishnabekwe, I want to speak. That didn't resonate with me too good, you know? When Nishnabekwe wants to speak, but we do have rules, and it was handled quite well. But when you think about it, that lady had a point. Especially what struck me when she said, I'm Nishnabekwe. So anyway, it was handled really well. So anyway, thank you for allowing me to be part of your life for a little while here. It's been good, and I'll go back and sit down for a while and maybe have a rest tonight. It's been a long day. Okay, miigwech.
So we'd like to invite Kieran Davis to come and do the reflections from the youth perspective. Kieran?
Hi, bonjour. I guess in part of my reflections today, I wanted to reflect on all that's happened and the good work that we've been doing today. You know, we started in a really good way and then in a new way, and which was very moving and very powerful and honoring our Ontario Regional Chief. And I had made a statement today about my skirt and my hair down, and you know, that still resonates. And history was being made today. Today, in the flag ceremony, in the opening ceremony, I carried in the pride flag for the first time. And I think how wonderful it is to be acknowledged in these spaces. You know, I make myself known, but now, you know, I can allow space for more of us to come in here and share our thoughts and our feelings. And I could say to them, this is a safe space to be in. You know, with that pride flag and being smudged as I walked in here, I was really emotional because for 2 years I've been saying that we need the flag here. We need it here. We need it always with us. We need to carry our Two-Spirit peoples with us always. And with our conversations today, you know, touching on the fuel charges and the reimbursements, I've been up north, you know, paying $4 or $5 a liter. It's not great. You know, it's really, really expensive. And with our compensation through that, like, I don't think it's fair. You know, more northern communities in flying reserves deserve that, because even in Sulaka, where I come from in Kenora, you know, they don't need that compensation because of how much more we're paying up north. With our Mining Act lawsuit, and I'm from Treaty 3, and I was checking online. I was really curious. I was looking at how many mining claims there are in Treaty 3. Treaty 3 is a span of 7,500 square kilometers, and there's 10,000 mining claims in that territory alone. And I get hurt and upset when I'm informed that there's more mining claims being done in my territory. And, you know, I agree with the chiefs in assembly here that, you know, it needs to stop. We need full control of our lands and our resources, and we cannot let them just take over and let them strip us of our lands. ORC had spoken this morning and spoke by leading by example. We just saw that today. You chiefs are leading by example by allowing the Two-Spirit Council to join the Ontario region, and by bringing in more voices from the PTO level, from your communities, to be here and share and lead with us. So I want to say thank you for all of you who passed that, and thank you for supporting us and being there. Miigwech.
Miigwech, Kieran. So I'm just here to provide some announcements. Today we got through all but 2 resolutions, which is awesome. But that leaves us with 2 left to go. So that also means you guys can't leave early tomorrow. All right? No, I'm just kidding. Thought that was gonna be funny, real serious right at the end of the day. Our first two agenda items tomorrow in the morning will be in camera until 10 a.m. As well as, please go support our craft vendors, our crafters and our artisans that are out in the hallways. Personally, I'm caught up for Christmas shopping. So I got that knocked out while being up here. The doors will be locked in this room for our Eagle staffs and any of our sacred items. As well as OKT Law is sponsoring a social event at Pocket Change Bar for all FCA attendees from 6 p.m. until 10 p.m. But personally, I would like everybody to be back in their rooms by the time the streetlights come on. You all heard that before, right? Cookum's out there telling me that. My grandpa used to tell me that. And it wasn't fair when the light would come on and it was still daylight outside and I'd be running home. So that event is from 6 p.m. till 10 p.m. There will be appetizers and discounted drinks. That is all the announcements that I have. So I will be turning it over to Thunder Mountain.
And the Thanksgiving ceremony at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning.
And yes, Chimigwech. The Thanksgiving ceremony, 6 a.m. Got to be there. Or right here. It's going to be right here, right there. Be there. As well as, I don't know whose this is. This is our Lost and Found. It's our fabric. It's really nice. It's kind of decorating our podium right now. So if you know who this belongs to, we have found the owner to this. All right, so let's send it over to Thunder Mountain. You guys can sing us out.
Somebody
Recording
brought it
stopped.
up, that's why. It wasn't here.